Parr's been very busy lately. You went out to Clemson this past weekend. Yep. You had to sit through that Arkansas State game with Memphis.
I did as well, yep.
But this is your busy time of the year. It's nonstop for the Memphis Tigers, and Penny Hardaway and the Tigers have struggled with that a little bit lately with those rapid games. We really saw it in Maui where, they were playing back to back to back, and they looked really solid and gassed a little bit, but they were ready for it. And
they were in a rhythm, for sure.
They were in a rhythm.
No doubt.
And then you see them kind of get out of that rhythm against, was it Louisiana Tech?
It was.
Yeah,
it was
Louisiana
La
Tech.
Tech first, and then Arkansas State, obviously. Not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before that.
Right. They play La Tech, and then Arkansas State, all of those happy people from Jonesboro coming in, getting their first ranked win. It was a team, or was it 30 years? It's been a long time for Arkansas State.
It had been a while. First win over Memphis since 1999, I believe.
Right. First of all, I wanted to ask, what did you see from that game? Why do you think that the Tigers really struggled as a whole? And also, there's something Penny did after the game that we'll talk about afterwards. But why do you think the Tigers struggled so much against Arkansas State?
Yeah, I think it just came out a step slow, a little bit flat. And then once Arkansas State kind of found that rhythm and began knocking down three after three after three, you give a team like that confidence late into a game, and it becomes a coin toss. The rankings go out the window, the net rankings, the KenPom, everything doesn't matter anymore when you're in that battle. And I think they just started off on the wrong foot. There were some substitutions that I think Penny made a little bit early, trying to get some guys in, like Dink Yates and Jared Harris and guys on the bench that I think he could have done perhaps a little bit later in the first half or maybe even the second, once that game is put away. But all of that collectively kind of came back to bite them. We saw that. So.
Yeah, and Penny said that he threw away that tape before they played Clemson.
Yes.
Which is rare. Usually a coach will go over that tape and over it and see what they did wrong, but Penny already knew what they did wrong, right? But did you kind of catch that did you circle that and that was something big that Penny said? I'm very surprised by it?
No doubt. In the presser, that was it was one of the first things he said after the players had left the room. And I definitely circled it in my head, and I wrote about that in my follow-up story. But I thought that was interesting. This is a guy that, according to him, watches every second, every play, right? Of games that his team plays. He rewatches and rewatches and is meticulous and just crazy, as most coaches are. Mm-hmm. This time he said, I'm good. I don't even want to touch it. He dragged that file right into the trash can on his laptop and called it a day. And it's because, according to him, that was not my team out there, is what he said. That was just a team that looked so unfamiliar, not only to Tiger fans and media, but also to the head coach himself, that he said, whatever happened there, let's put it aside, let's forget about it, let's look ahead, and that's what they did, and we saw it pay off big time over there in Little John Coliseum in Clemson.
Right, and I think that's something that Tigers fans really, really wanted to see. You want your team, after they lose a game like that, to come back always and look good in the next one, but Tigers fans are so scarred after last year, after finishing the season terribly last year. And then you have a big game against Clemson, who are kind of starting a little rivalry with Memphis in a way. Those games are always very physical, very close, going back to last year where Memphis picked up the win in FedEx Forum. But something that I really liked that I saw was P.J. Haggerty didn't have to carry the entire load for the Tigers. It was Colby, it was Tyrese, Dane and Musa getting in there, combining for something like 20 points together. Overall, it looked like the offense was flowing better. PJ, like I said, didn't have a good game. You don't want to see that from him. Maybe if PJ makes some of those shots. What did he finish for the game?
12 points, 3 of 10 shooting, but he had 6 assists and 8 rebounds, so he had his fingerprints on other facets of the game, even when he wasn't scoring. And I thought that was very, very encouraging.
Definitely. And for me, we were talking about it beforehand. For me, it was the confidence. They looked like they were lacking confidence against Arkansas State, which the Red Wolves looked like they were full of confidence, as they should have been. But Memphis, being the body language doctor that I like to say that I am, watching that Arkansas State game, watching Penny's body language, it seemed like they kind of gave up in that game. With the Clemson game, they were pedal to the metal the entire game. Also, what we were talking about is the ball was just moving a lot more fluidly. And Penny wants to get to 20 assists per game.
It's a lofty goal, as we talked about before.
Right,
we started
it's a
recording
lofty goal, but he believes this team has the ability to do so. And if that is Penny's idea, he's talked about, you all have not seen my team at 100% yet, firing on all cylinders.
Even the players said the same thing, Colby Rodgers and Tyrese Hunter, after that game against Clemson.
Right, and if those big three are playing at 100%, Penny believes they're the best backcourt in all of college basketball, which is pretty lofty, isn't it?
Hard to argue with that, right? Like, based on what we've seen. It's not a, you kept saying as the three-point shooting numbers were astronomically high, okay, It's only 2 games, it's only 3 games, only 4 games. Well, now it's been 10 games. It's only 31 in a season. So we're a third of the way about through, and they're the second best three-point shooting team in the country.
Right.
And you've got 3 players who are, hitting at a very, very, very high clip and much higher than the career averages. So if that can sustain, you can't argue with that, right? With Penny claiming that trio is the best in the country when it comes to backcourts.
Do you think this is the best backcourt? I didn't prep you on this, but I just thought of this.
Yeah.
Is this you've been covering the team for 2 seasons?
My third season.
Third season now.
Yes.
Is this the best backcourt you've seen in 3 seasons as a whole?
Without a doubt, because
Without a doubt.
as great as Kendrick Davis was in that 22-23 season, it was just KD, right?
Yeah.
Like, you had Alo, who was more of a defensive stopper and did the dirty work and was great at that role, but now you've got 3 guys who can score, can shoot, can space you out. 2 really elite playmakers in Tyrese Hunter and PJ Haggerty, and 1 guy, Colby Rogers, who I think is an underrated playmaker as well, in terms of facilitating and getting others involved. So when you've got a 3-headed monster like that, I think it's hard to argue. He's never had that, I don't think, in his tenure here at Memphis.
No, I agree. And I don't feel like you said, underrated Colby Rogers. I feel like we really haven't seen, except for that UNLV game, and a little bit against Clemson, is his play in the inside the paint. Play as a slasher. He can get to the basket. He's not just a shooter.
He's not just a shooter at all.
He's a very efficient shooter overall, even though he hasn't been extremely efficient all season long. He's had a couple games where you're just hitting 1 or 2 or 3 three-pointers.
For sure.
But I think if they can integrate him into the team as someone who can create his own shot, like Tyrese do, like PJ does, then I think this team. I think that's just another level.
Another layer they can unlock. Absolutely.
Right. I do want to see Dane Danger and Musa Cisse. I want to see Penny figure out who is that guy. I know Musa's getting the start, but they're kind of flip-flopping minutes in a way throughout the season.
They are, right?
It's like Penny's experimenting with it, trying to figure out who is his guy. What do you think?
The offense flows a little bit better when you've got Dane Danger out there, just because he's such a good playmaker, right? Just the way he passes the ball, not only from the high to low post, but kicking it back out, finding open guys, and his ability to put the ball on the deck. Musa, as good as he is, as big of a body as he is, he just doesn't provide that offensively. And I think everything kind of just opens up more when Dane is out there versus Musa Cisse.
Yeah, and something else where Penny said a lot of things this year, but something else he said, especially at the beginning of the year, is he believes that those 2 guys could be the best defensive front court in the nation. Overall, the Tigers have looked pretty good defensively as a whole this year. We keep going back to that Arkansas State game. It's just a blip on the radar. So if you take that out, the Tigers have impressed Penny. I think that he's okay with the way that they're playing defensively. Do you think that it's meeting his expectations? When I remember I asked him after the Louisiana Tech game where this team is defensively.
Yes.
Do you think that this is their ceiling? Or have they reached it yet? And he said they still have a long way to go. But you've been impressed overall by their defense.
I have, but I think something I thought about the other day was it's interesting how we came into the season thinking this is going to be a defense-first team. Everything's going to hinge on how well they guard. Well, now we've seen it be more of an offensively centered team, right? They're 24th in offensive efficiency, adjusted offensive efficiency on KenPom, and they're 60th in defense on the same site on KenPom. So it's interesting how now they're relying on their shot making and their ability to score versus just going out there and making it very, very hard for opponents to score.
Yeah, I think that this next stretch is going to be a really good test for them. Mississippi State is no joke. Ole Miss is no joke as well. And if you look at them, Mississippi State is very solid defensively. So is Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is a juggernaut offensively.
Exactly.
And if you can slow that team down, you can slow down any team in the AAC.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think last year we just saw so many lapses in defense where Penny, that's not who he is as a coach. He really wants to be. He's talked about it before. I really want to be, if we can take care of our defense, if we can be a defensive-first team, then the rest will follow. And in the games in which the Tigers have looked the best this year, that's what they've done. I mean, you look at that, the first game of the Maui Invitational against UConn. It was kind of overall defensively not the best performance from them.
I think the interior defense struggled in that game.
Yeah.
Tyrus Reed went off.
Yeah, true. But I think that they really sewed it up in overtime and got it done when it mattered most.
For sure.
So I think that this team still has some ways to go defensively, but at the same time, they've showed a lot. So if their ceiling is here, they're right here right now, in my opinion.
Exactly. When we talk about overall ceiling, because they're so far ahead of where we expected them to be offensively, I think that's even more encouraging. Knowing that Penny's a defensive-minded coach, knowing these players take pride in that side of the ball, if they can even get from 60th in adjusted defensive efficiency to maybe like 35th, you're talking about another tier that this team can be at collectively, cumulatively, if you will.
Well, let me ask you, when you were in Hawaii, how tough was it to come back?
It was hard, man. It was hard, and that trip is no joke. Like it's 8 hours back to Atlanta, where my layover was, and then from Atlanta to Memphis, obviously. But you think, oh, it's a U.S. state, it's not going to be far, but it's out there in the middle of the Pacific.
Did you do any surfing?
No, but I got on a jet ski.
Did you really?
Awesome. Yes.
Did you ride the waves?
I did.
Man.
Now, I'll show you some pictures after we get off
Oh,
here.
dude, yeah, I want to see that. One time I went on a jet ski and I tried to ride the waves a little bit too hard. I busted it so bad, man. It was awful. Yeah.
I was a little scared, though. I'm not gonna lie. I'm scared of the ocean a little bit. There's sharks out there.
Sharks?
There's sharks out there.
All you gotta do is just punch it in the nose.
Hopefully, I never have to figure that one out.
Well, the Tigers have a big game coming up this Saturday at FedEx Forum against Mississippi State.